Hey everyone, welcome to another Crowdlinker Fireside Chat. I'm Aram Melkoumov, the host. Thanks for tuning in. On the show, as you know, I'm interviewing well-known product and innovation leaders who are working on big industry disruptive problems from within their organizations. My guests have been in the trenches and have lots of practical advice to share with us today about building quality digital products, staying agile, and fostering an innovation and cultural mindset. This is season 2, episode number 3, and I'm here today with Saket Toshniwal to chat about experimentation, building engagement, and road mapping. Saket is a growth and product marketing leader who focuses on product monetization, CRM, and retention. Saket is going to be the new vice president of revenue and monetization at Actio, and he has held various leadership roles at LOVOO, as well as founding 2 companies in the past before. When not at his desk, Saket likes playing squash, listening to podcasts, and working on his new book, which we're all excited to check out when it comes out. Saket, awesome to have you here on our show today. Thanks so much for giving us some time.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and such a nice introduction. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem, no problem. Well, let me kick it off then with the first question I have for you. Would you mind starting off by telling the audience who's going to be listening a little bit about yourself and where you're based?
Right. So I'm Saket. I'm the Vice President of Revenue and Monetization at Axio. So it's an app to train with motivational coaches and live classes that supports fitness, yoga, meditation, your life goals. So I would just say download Axio on App Store or Play Store, and it is live. So you would love it. And then prior to Axio, I was working at LOVOO as a head of growth and product marketing. And LOVOO is a social entertainment app with millions of users. I focus on product monetization, the CRM, retention, product marketing, and growth. I was previously head of CRM, where I had the opportunity to build an amazing team. And earlier, I was a product manager at LOVOO. I also worked at a mobile marketing agency, helping clients define different customer lifecycle journeys and to grow revenue. And I worked at Philips Lighting in the global digital e-commerce team in the Netherlands. I founded 2 startups, as you mentioned, and these all experiences were just amazing. When it comes to how I came to this product marketing route, so I was doing a lot of these experimentations in monetization, in retention, and activation. So that led me to find out so many different levers and so many different hypotheses, prove different hypotheses, and I just fell in love with this product-led growth with user retention management and use monetization management. When it comes to product marketing, I was into go-to-market launches, planning the goals for the launch, the market research and competitive analysis, segmentation, positioning of the product, like the messaging that we got to do, the segmentation as to where we want to launch, for whom do we want to launch, what is the first hypothesis that do we want to check, what is the benchmark metric that we want to check. So those are very had interesting because it has both quantitative and qualitative metrics. And when it comes to and something I love to work with design, messaging, in product onboarding, develop go-to-market, setting launch dates, outline the timeline, and share that with the marketing, CRM, performance marketing team. And so those experiences, and I built that product marketing playbook, so it just brought me towards the product marketing thing. And also, what was interesting, because I had a chance to do app store optimization, working on paid campaigns and retargeting, integrating features to LOVOO user lifecycle or user lifecycle journeys, gather feedback from the users to gather more opportunities and test more hypotheses. So it's just the whole experience of building a consumer-centric product and most importantly, monetizing it to grow the revenue from a pretty good percentages was exciting.
Awesome. Well, it's a really impressive background. I think you have you have a very focused specialty, which is quite unique, I think, in the market. Um, and you've done and built, various growth teams as you just mentioned. So I wanted to ask the first question which I have about your product background is if you could share with us your playbook around experimentation.
Yeah, happy to. So when it comes to experimentation, I firstly, I always tell people that for product leaders that you have people, process, and speed, and you can only pick two when it comes to our experimentation. So you can't pick all of them and run a very great experimentation within the. Uh, I can give you later more examples to that. But coming to your question, so firstly, when it comes to experimentation, I have a structured format where I first have the question that I want to solve, like what is the question or what is the hypothesis. So like what do I believe or about the users, brains, behaviors, feelings, and motivations, and what makes me think that. So and this is not what you think that is going to happen or as an outcome of the experimentation, because that is in the next section of the framework. And this is a statement that is totally decoupled from the experimentation. So for example, I'm giving you an example. I believe that many gifters are not getting to know about the VIP program and the VIP gifts because the app does not explain the VIP badges and how to get it properly. I believe if we inform these gifters about the VIP badges, then they would be motivated to get the VIP badge, and then we will have more VIP gifters. And we know that VIP gifters lead to more revenue. That's it. It has no numbers, it is just a hypothesis. Then, important is prediction and the predictive impact. So, this is if you do your idea, what will happen, what do you think it'll happen rather. So I predict, like a statement can go like, I predict that if we do this idea, then metric this will increase by X% because of this justification.
Mhm.
So this is, I predict, if we inform big gifters about the value of the VIP badge and how to get them, then the number of VIP gifters will increase by 30%, 50%, because gifters will be motivated to earn the badge as it serves their ego needs, right? Or their motivation or their recognition, whatever. So it has the increment it can give, but doesn't have the confidence yet, right? Because that comes again later. So uh, and the experiment design, your reach, your that again comes in the experiment design. So and now in the experiment design, we have a control group and we have an experiment group. It can, if you're doing the experiment for the first time, you can have a 50-50 split. If you're doing an experiment with just a little bit of moderation, then you can have a different split as well, where you have more, where you can have a faster rollout in the market. So there you have, how will you measure the result? Example, we have is we check on the dashboard, or we check on the self-service board, or like the Tableau, or like through the data. So it is important to have how will you measure your result, and who is your target segment for the experiment. This is what events and properties define that target segment. So this is, and more often than not, you will realize that you want to have an experiment, but event and properties are missing. So this is a critical section to fill out in advance, so that in the last moment you don't run into something that, hey, you don't have this event and property, and hence you run 2 weeks of sprint to create those events and properties, and another other sprint to gather that data. And this event-time properties is important because what happens when you define an experiment and in the end you realize, okay, you don't have that event-time property, but you have something alternative which is close to that event-time property. And then the bad PMs or not so growth-led PMs just take that alternative a property and fix it into the experiment, and more often than not the whole experiment design and the spec and the segment changes, and your even though you have some results which is slightly conclusive but may not be rightly conclusive. So you have event spec, test spec, and design. Then you also have how many users are going to view your communication and what is the trigger through which your campaign will be seen or your product experiment will be seen. How many users will not just is in your audience, but how many users will see it, how many times will they view it, your effort to design that experiment, and how will you analyze this, how will you productize this test or campaign if it goes as a success. So if this should work, then what is that we are going to do? This is also something which is important because people just like sometimes just run an experiment and then they figure out, okay, if this works, we'll probably do this. But if it's not stated, then they probably just do the opposite. So, result and analysis, you also got to have, for example, in the example that I was giving, if we run this experiment in Germany, then and if we roll out, then we can roll out in DACH, Frites, and Benelux because we know that the large number of big gifters and the properties in Germany is similar to other countries as well. So yeah, and of course, with results and analysis, the ideas for segmentation and analysis needs to be prepared in advance and also recorded for future reference. So we do with that in Confluence, and those learnings can be shared and must be shared across the team. And when it comes to monetization strategies, there's also, once you define the scope, you build the scope, and when you build a scope, there are different parameters that you got to check, because there's opportunity cost involved when it comes to monetization strategy, and launch the test. When you launch the test, timing is very, very important. So how long is the test running? If let's say test is running for 4 weeks versus, and if you're checking the renewals versus annual revenue, recurring revenue, if you're checking that. So if it's running for a year versus a quarter, it makes a difference because you can't run a test for a year and then decide because you're leaving, even if it's 50-50 split and your test variant is winning by X%, you're still losing out, right? So you got to figure out which of the key indicators that kind of leads to that revenue metric, and then you know how it converts, and then you take a decision that by if this X% of this usage metric increases, then you would take a decision. Yeah.
Very, very thorough experimentation process. Thank you so much, Saket, for sharing that. With every experiment, if you take it down, if you bring it up to like a higher level, like what's the purpose of an experiment? It all comes down to like business objectives, business value, right? So the segue to my next question is, before constructing all your experiments, how should you best define like the North Star metric that you're going to be trying to achieve in that quarter, in that fiscal year, whatever it is? Because you need to have one or two, depending on what you want to focus on, North Star metrics in a specific department, like the ones that you've been working in. So how do you define what those are? And then from that, I think you already talked about the experimentation process, which is very thorough. But how do you contextualize like those metrics before you jump into an experiment?
So a North Star metric is a metric that a company uses to focus on their growth. So this number best reflects the amount of value that your company brings out of the customers. In addition to the North Star metric, it is also a long-term metric, a growth metric, and not a short-term metric for that indicates also have indicates your revenue. So we all know the well examples, like for example, Spotify. So it is time spent listening. This means that if the users, if premium users or non-premium users are listening to their podcast or listening to their music, etc., then they are uh, users are coming back and sticking to the product, and then uh, are more likely to retain and pay for the product. That's why they recently launched Spotify Green Room, and I was so surprised. I was on the day one, I was using the product, and there was like green rooms that was live. People were live and chatting for 8, 9, 10, 12 hours,
Mm.
and so this definitely increased their time spent listening, because people were not just listening, but voting, but giving diamonds. This was incredible. Then you have Airbnb. This is number of nights booked. Clear. It is a value for user, value for customers, and it can be clearly seen if the number of nights booked increases, the monetization KPI increases. Uh, for Facebook, monthly active users, or Instagram, monthly active users, because they run ads. More users are active, they will see ads, and they will have more monetization. For LinkedIn, it is engaged premium, engaged. It was engaged users. Engaged messaging you. I'm not 100% sure. I did attend a LinkedIn workshop, but I forgot about it. But yeah, for when it comes to North Star metric, if you just take revenue as a North Star metric, it's not right. So when it comes to your experimentation with North Star metric, you have to define, as I mentioned, the question, the hypothesis, an experiment, design spec. This is your input metrics, and then is the qualitative input metric, and the qualitative output metrics are observations and analysis. So you are more likely to produce winning results if you like have your North Star metric combined with your experimentation framework.
Mhm. And where do you think? I mean, from your experience, and I'm sure you've worked with other individuals in the same type of position at other organizations, but where do you think growth and product leaders typically get it wrong when it comes to running experiments?
Yeah, there's so many things people just go wrong. Okay, I've gone wrong so many times and like kind of realized. So first thing that I mentioned was when it comes to experiments, people, process, and speed. So if you are running experiments and focusing too much on process, then you will lose out on speed. And yeah, each experiment takes 3 months or 4 months or 2 months or whatever. If you're focusing too much on process and speed, like then your people will be unhappy because you are also focusing on process as well as you want speed, and people will be unhappy. So definitely you need to have a balance of, well, you can pick two, but you need to have a balance of three. So you're now when it comes to experimentation, a lot of people experiment in later part of the funnel, or like think about how can they uh, get back their old users again or do more activation. But I feel like there's a very strong part on pricing experimentation. And so when people pay, why people pay, early monetization strategies, and this is only after experimentations I have figured out that there's different strategies for potential customers, different strategies to upgrade your existing healthy customers, then strategies to at-risk customers. This is more likely to churn or have reduced their spends. There are different strategies for churn customers, and the different strategies to give incentives to different kinds of customers. You can't give incentives to all kind of customers at the same go.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I would say that there are a couple of things, as I mentioned, people process speed, different, knowing your different strategies for customers, and yeah, sorry, you were saying
I
something.
was going to say, so what are people process speed? Like, what's people?
So people can be people uh, who are actually in the process of that experimentation. These are your employees, right?
Okay.
Uh, so if you have too much process for your employees, then then people, some people would like the process, but your speed will be hampered if there would if your if you want to have speed, then you have speed and people, and then process is somehow skipped out. Yeah, so
Mm.
this is what.
Okay, got it, got it. And can you give us an example of an experiment that you ran where you applied this kind of solution and whether it was
Yeah,
successful or not?
yeah,
Or
there were
what did they uncover? Like, what's like the big thing that you found?
yeah, there were very very many experimentations, but I would say one of the things that we first tried, the early day zero monetization. When we tried the day zero monetization, it we figured out that it we were okay just running experimentations with speed, and we had the right people so that people were happy. However, since the process of including product or getting the buy-ins from the product was not uh, the most appropriate, what happened that they were also working on um, the user lifecycle monetization for the first 28 days, so the value chain offering, which card abandoned and different things. And we were also working on monetization in the early part of the funnel, day zero, day two, with different communication, right? So I think if we get the buy-in from the product, and inform people in advance, and have that synergy in advance, that communication in advance, that hey, this is the approach that we are doing, this is the experimentations that we would do, this is the quarter goal or the half yearly goal to increase the pricing by X%, and by increase the pricing by X%, uh, uh, and also increasing the conversion by X%. And this is how we approach and have a synchronized communication with push notifications, email, product, in-app, paywalls, etc. Then it just works much better.
Hmm. And you mentioned push notifications, and I know at your previous company and just in general, you have a lot of experience in this, where you were responsible, I think, for sending billions of push notifications and emails in your different positions. Can you walk us through what processes and systems you had set up to facilitate that volume and caliber of activity?
All right. So yeah, that's right. So I have worked on push notifications, email, in-app notifications very extensively. When it comes to push notification, there are certain push notifications that users will, in a community space, will generate for other users. There are certain push notifications that you get to send to get users back to complete their monetization or conversion, or um, uh, the monetization conversion, or even these days I get like phone calls if my product is in the cart, very strangely. Hey, and then on the phone call itself they give a promo code, and then they like we check out at that time. So
Mm.
it is pretty interesting. So when it comes to push email and in-app, I would definitely say that having your customer lifecycle journey, push notification, timing, which is like reactivation pushes, defining different push groups and push types. So push groups are like reactivation pushes, user to user pushes, sales pushes, and different categories. And then you define your push types and define the different intervals and the prioritization as to which of the push will be sent first, or if there are multiple pushes, then which will be prioritized first, so that the users are not bombarded with hundreds of push notifications,
Hmm.
but get the most appropriate push notification. Same if the users are getting the push notification and reacting to it, then you don't need to send the email. And if they are responding to the email more, then you got to send the email. Amazon is very good with email, and they're also pretty good with push notifications. So they sync with email and push notification pretty much. When it comes to in-app notifications, there is really a lot you can do with push to deep link to in-app to conversions, then to in-app to deep link to conversions. So email to in-app to conversion. So there's a lot you can do with in-app notifications as well. So I definitely say that you have to like use external systems for if you want to modify push notifications, email, as well and send in-apps, and you can't build all of them within with of the highest capabilities within your company,
Hmm.
if you are a growth company. But without mentioning the names, because otherwise this is we add. So without mentioning the name, there are a lot of good companies who does this, but don't get into the trap of salespeople telling you, "Hey, they're the best," but really get down to use cases and try to solve and get into technical spec check of that system, that whether it'll fit with your nested data or not.
And which you've probably used a whole bunch of different platform solutions out there
Yeah,
today. Which one would you say are your favorite? And I'm not holding you to it. Just like first
yeah,
thing that comes
so,
to mind is like, oh, that one, good experience, well
yeah.
run with product kind of thing.
Yeah, so when it comes to push notifications, I definitely say that when to have a system internal and do not completely rely on the external systems for push notification, but for marketing push notifications, etc., you can definitely rely on there are several, but like just we use Braze at the moment we used to use Braze at LOVOO before, sorry. And then there are definitely so many other push notification and email. For email, there's a lot of competition for uh, Mailchimp, Mailgun, and SendGrid, etc. So and Spark Mail. So it also depends on the volumes, the commercials, the email validation, etc. Things that you get from those. When it comes to your in-app notifications, a lot of things can be done within natively within the app. A lot can be done through HTML. A lot can be done through like templating. So I wouldn't say a specific platform, but I would say that there are very good solutions available in the market right now that can help you grow.
Okay. Any like how about like something like one signal or something
Yeah.
comparative?
So we have Braze, Amplitude, CleverTap, OneSignal,
Mm,
um, um, then Lean Plum, Mailgun, SendRed, MoEngage. So yeah, there's a lot.
there's a lot.
But yeah,
Okay. And throughout this journey of yours, did you ever face any issues related to attribution? Ways to get attribution right when working with such large audience segments.
yeah, we definitely faced a lot with attribution. So when it comes to attribution, we used to use attribute adjust for UA attribution. However, when it comes to attribution of monetization, we built internal triggers where we can have the attribution and that data being showed at our systems. Um, but we when it comes to push notifications, email, in-app with push notifications, we had a after the push notification, if you clicked on the push notification and then bought within 20 minutes, then we consider that as a push triggered purchase. With email, if you clicked on the email and bought it within 30 minutes, then it's an email conversion. And if with in-app, if you bought it within 5 minutes after seeing the in-app or clicking
Mm,
on the CD of the in-app and purchase that, so that is a conversion through in-app. So yeah, attribution for your monetization works, or clicks and stuff like that work with your notifications work like that. When it comes to retargeting, definitely users who have clicked on your ad and came back to your app, or seen an impression and came back to the app within 10 minutes. So those are a couple of good metrics.
interesting. So you time box it from when they see the notification to when they check out and associate it to that
Yeah,
funnel.
yeah.
Um, and with all these billions of data points, how do you go about sense making in terms of seeing what's working, what's not working? I know you have triggers and reporting, but like it's still a lot of data, I think, to parse through at any given time. And any advice you would give to the audience about that?
Yeah, with I we used to have, I guess, more data, but with no more GDPR things, we have regulations. We have even lesser data, so it is good that we have lesser data so that we can really think of the data that we need, and also storing data costs. So when it comes to organizing data, so here's a couple of suggestions. So first, there are certain data that you need for long period of time. Can be purchases, can be value of purchase. This is 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, etc. User IDs of the users. Yeah. But there's certain data which you needed for 7 days or 30 days maximum. These are specific event triggers that the users have done. So, there are certain data you just need. So, for example, if a user is doing multiple sessions in the of the classes, right? So you can store that a user has done 1,000 sessions, but if the user has done, let's say, 100 sessions this month, then you just need the 100 sessions the user did, and when did the user did that session, so that you can trigger the user to come back to the app, but or monetize smartly during that time. However, if the user has done 1,000 sessions over a 3 year period of time, you don't need to store every session or when, what was the rating, etc. And you just need to store the overall or average it out, something like that. So uh, storing for the right time, the right amount of data, and the quality of data. So that's important. And then using the data. If you can be, so a user is, let's say, on a dating app, is doing a swipe, does 1,000 swipes a day. You don't need to track 1,000 swipes for every user. You just need to track if the user has done the first swipe, 50th swipe, or the 100th swipe, for example, right? So and then you know what kind of users have done 150 and 100. So it's again, you can see you can capture the data based on the number of times the trigger this worked. You have to build that in the front end, and that data you can send it on the back end or client side. Again, not getting into technicals here. That's the other thing, and then how you process that data, how you visualize data. So sometimes some data needs to be visualized in order to get the right numbers. So what tools do you have? Are you on AWS, GCP, or what, Azure, or what kind of thing? How do you have that representation? How are you sending data between the different tools to in order to do use that data for campaigns to get users back, to monetizations, or to do experimentation. So, and then how are you analyzing those data as well? So, yeah, there's a lot with solutions there. You can also have things like these CDMs where which basically takes in all your data and sends it to the relevant parties. And these are like M particle, for example. It takes in all the data and sends it to the logic that you have defined, which uses the data in order to do the campaigns. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Last couple of questions here, Saket. With all this experimentation, North Star metrics, all these things that we've discussed so far today, I wanted to ask, how does that tie into product road mapping? So, you have all this data, you have all this potential foresight of like engagements and interactions of your user base. What is the decision making process in terms of deciding how do you decide which products or features to go and build next?
That's an interesting question. So when it comes to product road mapping, again, here's a framework that I use. So when you know your key metrics, your business metrics, key business metrics for your quarter or year or half yearly, then you break it down into the uh, key objectives, which is it can be increasing the number of bookings or number of sessions at the app or number of, or increasing the cohorts who are doing the yoga session or the meditation session or journaling in the app, or new users who have done at least X number of mm, session within the first week and then are coming back percentage of that. So you define your objectives there. Objectives can be numerical, can be a milestone, can be numerical, binary as well. And then you have key metrics uh, that that results in your that users coming back to the app. So you have that key metric, users coming back to the app, booking the session or something else. So you have key metrics, key performance indicators for those objectives, and then with those, you when you define your objectives, you also have the product initiatives that you would do. So the different initiatives across through the quarter or through, and those are big heads, of course. And then you break it down, those initiatives, into smaller initiatives as to, let's say you want to increase the number of female users, happy female users in the app. And you break it down into how do you define happy, how do you measure happy, and then you have the different any initiatives that can increase the happiness in the app of human users, and then the product features or the experimentation that goes with it, with that initiative. And then of course it's you have your sprints working on it. And I always say that, let's say you are planning an experimentation, which is like sorry, you're planning a product feature built up, which is in 3 months from now or 2 months from now. You can already do discoveries and experimentation now, and tie that to your product initiative then, so that if this succeeds, then you will do that initiative. If this succeeds, then the results of this will influence that. So into the your product roadmap. Yeah.
Okay. No, it's really interesting because I think at the end of the day, everything kind of ties back to ROI, right? In many
Yeah.
ways, we have the experimentations, that we're doing and figuring out what product roadmap we're going to build. But as a product leader, I want to ask you, what advice do you give? Would you give? Sorry, in terms of demonstrating or showing ROI to your leadership or to your management team? Because I've heard, it's very difficult sometimes or most of the time to show this because, initiatives could take quarters or years, right? To demonstrate whether they were a success or failure. So how do you maybe go about time boxing the demonstration of ROI in your role?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. So that's a typical monetization question. So when you whenever you are building on experimentation or for product marketing, whether you're hiring those people, etc., you have the purpose for the experimentation or purpose of the role. Some experimentation can take long time, so you have those indicative methods. You have you have metrics that also uh, affect the experimentation in a negative way. So you have counter metrics, um, and you have benchmarks to that. So when you know, okay, these are your metrics. These are your metrics for experimentation, and these are your metrics for your monetization metric. Then, if you're moving your needle towards the monetization metric, um, in a way that it is generating more value for the users as well as for business value for the company, then you know you're moving in the right direction. And but it's important that you are able to measure that monetization metric into your the growth of the revenue. So your growth model for revenue growth model must uh, uh, measure the different indicative monetization metric as well as tie that into into the your growth model for um, uh, for your total revenue. So you have different variables, etc.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Saket, for sharing all this awesome information with us today. I really appreciate your time. For everybody listening in and tuning in, please uh, stay tuned for our next episode where we're going to have more product and innovation professionals share their various insights in terms of what they do and how they show success in their roles. So thanks again, Saket. I appreciate your time.